Within recent weeks, we've received a bunch of news regarding Sonic X Shadow Generations. And from what we received in terms of news, it seems like it's a pretty good chunk of the game. And it was pretty damn hyped to see a lot of things from the past return. And seeing the likes of Shadow's new abilities, like using Chaos Control in stages, gets me really excited to play through the game. But when it comes to fans' reaction to all the news, it felt pretty damn redeeming, as the new trailer seemed to be extremely well received and people being genuinely excited for the new game, and a lot of fans even now still dissecting the trailer and gameplay of it. It's a pretty big breath of fresh air to see a lot of people excited for a new Sonic game, as it seemed like in past years, a lot of people kind of seem to pick out the negatives in a lot of trailers, but it kind of seems like the opposite for Sonic X Shadow Generations. And thanks to the gameplay that we received at Summer Games Fest from the demo, and also the trailer we got from that, it seems like we know a lot more about Shadow Generations and also the remaster. But even though this is super well received by fans so far, a lot of people are still in high speculation of this game, as Sonic X Shadow Generations is $50 or even $60 if you buy the digital Deluxe edition, and a lot of people being skeptical if they should buy just a remaster of Sonic Generations or if there's enough content inside of the Shadow side of the game. Is Shadow really enough just to pay $60 whole to play as 5 stages inside of Shadow, or will there be more? Or what exactly is different inside of the remaster, if anything? And that's what I hope to educate you on within this video. I hope to let you guys know every difference that I was able to spot inside of the trailer and also the gameplays that I've seen so far, and hopefully ease that decision on buying the standard edition, the deluxe edition, or simply just buying the game at all. So with all that being said, here's all the differences and also all the new things I was able to spot in Sonic X Shadow Generations. Sonic Generations is a personal favorite of mine and truly a game that I always seem to come back to. But when this game was initially announced, even with the Shadow stuff being added, I really questioned on the fact of what they could potentially change inside of the normal side of Generations. The game is already great, but what could they potentially add to make me completely play through it again and pay $60 to do that? And from what we've seen so far, it actually looks like there's quite a few changes inside of this, and I'm glad that Sega decided to do that, as it really feels like that the game that you might be playing through is more of a fresh game, but also truly feeling like a remaster. A lot of games in gaming have been so-called remaster, but don't necessarily feel like a remaster, they more just feel like a port. And that was the biggest concern I had for Sonic Generations, as it seemed like it was just going to be a simple port over. Just a simple port that ran at 60 frames at least. But the most notable and the most exciting, in my personal opinion, that they decided to add inside of Sonic Generations was the drop dash. You might know the drop dash from the likes of Sonic Mania when it was first introduced for Classic Sonic, and even Classic Sonic carrying that over to the likes of Sonic Forces. While the gameplay, in my opinion, wasn't great in Forces, it still worked pretty well. And honestly, one of the only options inside of the gameplay for Classic Sonic that actually made it feel somewhat redeeming to play him. And I would imagine that it'll feel very similar to that, and potentially even making it more of a viable option than the Spin Dash, as we all know how broken the Spin Dash is in Generations for Classic Sonic. And while it's not super shocking that they decided to give this to Classic Sonic, the real kicker is they decided to give it to Modern Sonic as well. We actually got something very similar to this in Sonic Frontiers, and it definitely makes sense why they decided to do this in Generations for the remaster as well. Thanks to footage from Fidel, we're actually able to kind of see what this might look like, and this truly gets me really excited to see how people can run through stages with the drop dash. I think this will be amazing to see what people can potentially do with the drop dash, with creating different shortcuts and also shaving off some of their personal best times with this. As it does feel like in the modern Sonic games, you are just holding the square button to completely boost through the entire stage, but I'm really excited to see how the drop dash can potentially change that. And I'm especially excited to see how the drop dash will perform in a lot of his 3D areas. Another really big thing is you can also see that it looks like the controls have been swapped around for the new remaster. You can notice right away on the boost gauges it looks like it is R2 to boost now instead of holding down square like we're used to in normal Generations, as it looks like they're going towards more of the Frontiers gameplay. But it has been confirmed that the button mapping can be swapped around, which is great to hear, and I honestly am not a really big fan of how they're swapping this around. I understand why they'd want to make it similar to Frontiers, especially if Sonic Frontiers was your first Sonic game, you might be used to those controls. But as someone who's put damn near thousands of hours into Sonic Generations, it would be really hard to break my muscle memory of changing the controls around for Generations. I'm not sure if you can adjust every little button inside of the button mapping area inside of this game, as that hasn't been confirmed yet. But there are two options, of one being the legacy controls, which are normal to the old generation style. But there also is the new style that is very similar to Sonic Frontiers. as the Frontiers one changes where the boost is, and it also changes the way the homing attack works. Instead of pressing the action button twice like we're used to in normal generations, it looks like you go from action to potentially the square or the X button on Xbox. But I do love seeing Sega add more customization into Sonic games, as that definitely is a really big selling point for me. Just being able to feel comfortable playing a Sonic game in my own way. Kind of a minor thing that they decided to get rid of in Sonic Generations was actually the life system. As everyone knows, either from Sonic Generations or a million other games across the world, there is a life system inside of Sonic Generations where if you lost all your lives, you would game over and you would restart from back in the beginning of the stage. But it seems like in Sonic X Shadow Generations, this is completely removed from the game. And ultimately, I don't think this is a bad decision. I know some people might disagree with that and may think that this game is now becoming too easy, but I kind of like to disagree. In my opinion, Sonic Generations isn't a hard game. It isn't a hard game to beat, and it's not hard to get through all of the stages. If you're truly struggling for lives, I hate to break it to you, but I think you're just bad at the game. I can't remember the last time or if I even ever have game overed in Sonic Generations. You can 1, buy lives from the shop from all the points you gain from completing stages, but 2, it's just kinda hard to die. I mean, yeah, you can go too fast and fall off and die if you don't know what's coming up next, but if you've played a Sonic game before, I just feel like it's hard to game over. So ultimately, I think this is an okay decision, and it potentially could lead to us getting more skills inside of the shop. Opposed to us spending all of our points on lives in the shop, we could be potentially spending it on more skins, or potentially another collectible item inside of Generations that they decide to add. Or potentially it could even lead into the Chao missions that have been announced. There are now 3 Chao emblems hidden throughout every level in the game, and collecting all 3 of those emblems rescues a particular Chao from that stage. We also see these Chao appear in the first cutscene of the game celebrating Sonic's birthday, which is pretty cool, and it potentially could create for new cutscenes or just cutscenes altered in some type of way. I don't know how much Sega really wants to rewrite Generations, and I don't think they'll do that, but I think they'll add some Chao to certain areas in the cutscenes, but also to the hub world. But it seems like that these Chaos can also become companions of Classic and Modern Sonic in their levels. Now, what exactly are they going to do inside their levels? We don't 100% know quite yet, as the people that played the demo were only able to play through Green Hill Zone. I would kind of hope that inside the Chaos they have some different skills inside of them. I think, for instance, if you did a Sonic Chao, it could potentially give Sonic a higher speed stat, or just genuinely make him faster running through the stages. If you had a Tails Chao, it could potentially give you more air boost, or if you had a Dark Chao, it could maybe give you some type of Chaos ability, or something with Shadow. I don't really know, but I think there could be some really cool stuff that Sega could cook up with the Chaos. And from what we know so far, there isn't any Chao Garden, and I highly doubt that will be a thing inside of this game as much as I would like to see it. But this is definitely a huge step in the right directions for Chaos to come back in the future, and potentially even get their own game, or if they decide to do an Adventure 3 or something along those lines, add a Chao Garden as a secondary mode inside of that game. I truly think it's only a matter of time until we get another Chao Garden. People have been asking this for years and years. Another really cool change is actually part of the HUD, where you can now track your red star rings in a stage. Before, in old generations, when you were collecting the red stars, you actually never knew how many red star rings were left or which ones you had to collect, whether it was the second or the 5th one. As the only way that you were ever able to view or have an idea of that was back in white space in the hub world. But now it looks like when you collect red star rings, there is a big HUD that pops up that shows you that you collected it and which red star ring you've collected. This will make it a lot easier to be able to track your red star rings, and is definitely a great quality of life change inside of Generations. And the only other 2 things that we truly know about Sonic Generations so far is 1, the Casino Night DLC that was added in the old gen games is now going to be included inside of the base game, and the unlockable port of the original Sonic the Hedgehog game is no longer in the game. Now, hey, this could definitely include the likes of porting over Shadow the Hedgehog inside of this game, right, Sega? Eh? That's a bit wishful thinking, but it would be pretty damn cool for them to add Shadow the Hedgehog inside of this game somehow. I mean, Shadow does have an entire hub world to himself. I mean, why not, right, Sega? But we'll get into his hub world in a little bit. Now moving on to Shadow Generations. For those that do not know, Shadow Generations is a completely different mode inside of the remaster, as Shadow Generations is not included inside of actual Sonic Generations and is its own thing. A really big comparison that people have been making with that is actually Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, where Bowser's Fury was a completely different mode inside of that game. very similar to how we're doing it here in Sonic X Shadow Generations, as they're 2 games inside of 1. But Shadow obviously having very similar gameplay that we have in Sonic Generations, with having a spin jump, homing attack, stomp, boost, and even an air boost, and even a lot of the stage designs kind of looking somewhat similar, but it seems like Shadow has a lot more cinematics. The biggest comparison that I can make when it comes to the cinematics is actually going to be the Avatar stages inside of Sonic Forces. It just looks like they're a lot more well done inside of Shadow Generations, and I can't wait to see all the different cutscenes inside of each stage. And before you even make the comment, I'm not comparing this to Sonic Forces. It's not even close. But the really cool thing that Shadow gets inside of his stages is being able to use his various Chaos powers. One being the Chaos Snap, as it looks like instead of having a homing attack, he just completely Chaos Snaps to each enemy and absolutely obliterating any of them in his path. It also looks like in certain boss fights he can fire off Chaos Spears, and even in stages he can do the same thing. It seems like this is going to be more of a boss fight thing, but it's really interesting to see how this might work in some stages, as it seems like the Chaos Spear is able to stun and even hit distant targets. But obviously the biggest and the most exciting one is going to be Chaos Control. Shadow has his own Chaos Gauge, but when the Chaos Gauge is eventually filled up, he's able to activate Chaos Control and slow down time. In a way, this is kind of similar to Sonic Heroes. After Shadow does his Team Blast, everything around him just kind of stops for a few seconds, but it looks like it's just a little bit more well done and a little bit more thought out here, as it seems like there are certain shortcuts and also different platforming that you can do while using Chaos Control inside of Shadow Generations, as it really looks like this is going to be a really big addition in future stages. As we can already see in the Space Colony Arc stage, that the Chaos Control ability helps Shadow pull off a lot of shortcuts inside of this, as I would imagine it's going to be very similar to that in the other stages like Bullet Station, Rail Canyon, or Kingdom Valley. And the only other power that we know about as of right now, and obviously the most exciting and damn near the most hype thing we've ever seen in Sonic, is his wings. This has been confirmed to be Shadow's Doom powers, as it seems like this is something he was able to achieve from his Black Arm side. In the original Shadow the Hedgehog 2005, we never really see Shadow use any of his Black Arms abilities, or if he even had any. But it seems like deep down he's actually had them forever, they just have never been activated. And the first one that we've seen so far is him getting wings, and this is goddamn insane. The design of this is so cool, and I cannot wait to see how this works in stages, if we can be able to use that. I really hope these Doom powers are allowed to be able to use in each of the stages, or being able to go back and play stages with the Doom powers, as it seems like the gameplay we've seen, there's certain higher areas that Shadow can't naturally get to, so I would imagine that he could fly up to them or kind of give himself a second jump with it. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but just the ideas of these, it looks absolutely incredible. And this is just the beginning of his Doom powers. We could very much see other stuff being added to Shadow with his Doom powers. We don't know how long the game is, besides Azuka saying that Shadow Generations won't be nearly as long as what Sonic Generations is, but that definitely gives him enough time to add more Doom powers inside of this. And I would really like to see him go all out with his Doom powers and being a lot more unique of a character, as a lot of times in the past, Shadow just kind of feels like a Sonic copy. And with his Doom powers, I feel like that's going to really set him aside from Sonic and not being so much of a copy and being his own character, with not only his Chaos powers, but also his Doom powers. And with Shadow running through his past, we also see a lot of returning villains as well, and maybe even potentially other characters return. The 2 big ones that have returned so far that have been confirmed are going to be the Bio Lizard and Black Doom. It seems like Black Doom is going to have a big part to play inside of this, as he is completely following him around inside of the first stage that we see, and it seems like that he might be behind all of what's happening to Shadow inside of Shadow Generations. And I can't wait to see what other returning characters or other villains are going to be coming back. And we can even see the likes of the Bio Lizard fight that looks absolutely incredible and a bunch of fun to play. It doesn't look nearly as crazy as the Titan fights inside of Sonic Frontiers, but it looks pretty damn cool. And I can't wait to see all the boss fights that are going to be returning for Shadow. And please, Sega, please just give us Mephiles at least a boss fight. That's like my one and only want. I just want Mephiles the Dark to be back one more time. I just want him to have one more boss fight, and then I'll never ask again, I promise. But anyway, the amount of stages that have been confirmed have only been 3 so far. The first one being the Space Colony Arc / Radical Highway that we got to see in the trailer, but also the Summer Games Fest demo, as it seems like Black Doom teleports Shadow into Radical Highway, which is actually pretty cool to see. What's really interesting is I wonder if they continue to do this for other stages as well. As opposed to just having the one and only stage representing each of the games that Shadow has been in, what if they take 2 from each of those games? We see the likes of Rail Canyon / Bullet Station get confirmed from Sonic Heroes inside of the game, but what if Black Doom teleported him to say Frog Forest, or even Grand Metropolis from Sonic Heroes as well? I think it's a very big possibility that there could be multiple stages inside of one stage for this game that we already see in the first stage of the game. And the same goes for Kingdom Valley. I'm extremely excited to see Kingdom Valley back, but I would love to see the likes of Flame Core or White Acropolis come back from Sonic 06 as well. There's a lot of possibilities and potential that they could definitely be doing here, and I cannot wait to see all the stages and bosses that have been confirmed for Shadow. There also is some gameplay differences from Shadow Generations to Sonic Generations. One of the most notable ones is the drift and the lightspeed dash seem nowhere to be found inside of Shadow Generations, but there is a similar ability to the lightspeed dash inside of Shadow's Chaos Control, as it seems like there's a bunch of green energy that he can kind of use the lightspeed dash off instead of rings that Sonic does. So I'm interested to see how different that is than the lightspeed dash, and not having the drift is a really interesting pick. But so far from what we've seen in the gameplays, it seems like there isn't a lot of areas to drift inside of Shadow stages, so I don't think it'll be super missed in those. But the drift is still an option inside of normal generations, so it's not like it's going anywhere. It just seems like it's not a thing for Shadow, unless you unlock that later on. The other thing is that Shadow actually has a double jump where modern Sonic has a jump dash. I actually really enjoy a double jump on Shadow, and I think that's a lot better of a choice for him, as I think his stages are going to really need double jumps with how much there is to explore inside of these stages. If you look at some of the sections that Shadow actually runs through inside of the actual demo, there is just so many paths that you can go on and so many upper pathways. It really seems like the double jump was the obvious pick for Shadow here. And one of the most exciting areas that they decided to add inside of Shadow Generations is a 3D open hub world. And apparently this is heavily inspired by the open zone design of Sonic Frontiers according to Sega. Instead of white space being a 2D side-scrolling area where you're able just to go to the stages in the shop and also the kind of the gallery area, it seems like this is an entire 3D open hub world idea. And if you kind of look around, it kind of seems like there might be potential areas that Shadow can fight different enemies or even just explore really cool things inside of this. And the hub world might have a lot of gameplay inside of it with unlocking different stages or trying to find where the stages are going to be at. We don't have a lot of information on the 3D open hub world white space quite yet for Shadow, but this is definitely one of the most exciting additions to his game, as I can't wait to see what they potentially add inside of the zone or potentially even boss fights inside of this area, and just how different it is from the 2D area in normal generations. The other thing is it looks like red star rings are no longer a thing inside of Shadow Generations, they're only in base generations. As it seems like there's a bunch of collection stuff to grab inside of Shadow Generations, it's just no longer red star rings. The few things that we can actually see has an icon of a book, a music note, and a paintbrush. Now, what these exactly do, I have no idea. If I had to give it an educated guess, I would imagine the book gives us more information on Shadow's backstory, as inside of the pre-order bonus, you get Gerald Robotnik's journal detailing Shadow's creation. I'm guessing the book has something to do with that, as maybe you have to collect the pages inside of Shadow Generations to complete the book and all the information that this details. The music note, as I would imagine, is very similar to what we see in regular generations when you complete these special stages. When you hit the bell, a music note comes out. If it's blue, it gives you art. If it's orange, it gives you a song to play inside of the other stages. I would imagine it just gives you other songs that are from Shadow the Hedgehog games or different stages he's been through. And that's a great addition, as I think Shadow the Hedgehog in all of his stages has some of the best music and some of my personal favorites. The one thing that gets me really curious is the paintbrush. The paintbrush I can't really guess on. The only thing that I could maybe think of is changing the way Shadow looks. Very similar that we see in Sonic Superstars, where you're able to buy spray paint cans to be able to customize your robot that you make. I can maybe see it to where you can customize Shadow. Instead of making his quills have a red on them, you could maybe make them blue or gray to look like maybe like Mephiles. I don't know. Unless there's another thing like being able to customize like maybe his bike or potentially in other vehicles that might be in this game from Shadow, or even being able to add like stickers and stuff like that to the hub world. I don't know. I would imagine it's something along those lines though. But I think it would be really cool to be able to customize Shadow and change his colors up. It also looks like the ranking system is slightly different inside of Shadow Generations as well. Opposed to getting the perfect bonus that you would get inside of Sonic Generations where it would give you an S rank for not dying, it seems like an S rank is granted simply on just how fast you can get through the stages. Very similar that you see in the cyberspace levels of Sonic Frontiers. And I think this is a better decision. I think the perfect clear bonus was kind of a dumb idea, and it seemed really hard not to get S ranks in that game. It also seems like there is some type of shadow emblem that you can be able to grab inside of the stages as well. What this unlocks or what this gives you or what the purpose of it is, we have no idea. But it's got to be for something important or potentially even allowing you to 100% the game is collecting all of these emblems. There might be some bonus for getting all of them or some secret stage, or maybe this is how you move on to the next stages by collecting these emblems somehow. I'm not 100% sure what this does, but I'm excited to see what it's all about. And his winning animations look incredible. If you haven't seen all of these winning animations that we've seen so far yet, these look so goddamn well done by Sega, and let's truly need a round of applause for this. If you haven't seen all of them, please go watch them because they look so goddamn cool. Sega truly outdid themselves with the winning animations here. And also thanks to Choctopus on his gameplay that he ended up dropping, had really good audio on it. We're able to confirm that Kirk Thornton is going to be returning as Shadow inside of this game. As Kirk Thornton has done an amazing job with Shadow so far, and I think he's starting to get better and better with each game, and I hope that they continue to give him the spotlight for Shadow. Even though he's not my favorite Shadow we've ever received, he does continue to show signs of improvement each and every game, and I hope they continue to give him the spotlight in that. It also looks like the story for Sonic Generations and Shadow Generations happen at the same exact time. It'll be really interesting how they decide to fit in the rival fight, but also it's going to be the Time Eater fight at the end. Will you still fight against Sonic as Shadow in the rival fight? Will you just kind of have a roles reversed kind of situation there? I don't know. You would think for story purposes they would probably do something like that, and if so, I'm looking forward to that to see how different they can make it while playing with Shadow. But also the Time Eater, will Shadow still just kind of chill on a rock and cheer on Sonic? I don't know. I think with everything that Shadow is going to go through in Shadow Generations and also activating his Doom powers, it would be a damn shame not to include him in the Time Eater fight. But maybe that'll just be a Shadow Generations exclusive thing. As like I said, I don't see them changing the normal Generation story at all, except for maybe adding some chows in certain areas. But I really hope in some type of way we get Super Shadow, as I would really like to see that. And possibly see him get new abilities, kind of similar that we've seen in Frontiers with Sonic getting new abilities for Super Sonic. Another thing that isn't necessarily different with inside of the game, but something I want to include just because of how damn jealous I am, is going to be the US versus Japan differences. The biggest one is going to be the box art. And you can tell me I'm wrong in the comments, but I think that the Japanese box art is significantly better than the US version. Instead of Shadow just running on some flying boxes and having the same render of modern and classic Sonic again, this is a completely different light and dark version of the cover art. This looks so goddamn well done, and I am so jealous that Japan is getting this box art opposed to what we're getting. Another thing that they are actually getting is a collector's edition of the game. As we know this, there is a standard and a deluxe version, but Japan is also getting a collector's edition. This includes a book of the art of Sonic X Shadow Generations, as I'd imagine they get some exclusive art in there and also some concept art of the game. They get a keychain of Sonic and Shadow's shoe, which looks so goddamn cool and such a cool idea. But they also get a statue of Shadow holding his emblem. Similar that we see in the gameplay where he's collecting these emblems and yet we don't know what they're going to do so far, this is just a really cool looking figure. And they also get a really big looking box to match it all with the Japanese box art on it. I don't know who I need to talk to or what Sega rep that I need to get in contact with, but for the love of God, I need this. Take all of my money now, please. The Sonic fan in me is like screaming out that I just need to figure out some way to convert my money to yen to buy this. Like, why did the US not get some type of version like this? I'm so goddamn jealous, and that's the only reason I'm putting it in this video is just because of how jealous I am. And if you live in Japan, please send me one. All jokes aside, there also is a lot of pre-order bonuses and also deluxe edition bonuses as well that we're getting in the US. The first pre-order bonus I kind of talked about, which is going to be Gerald Robotnik's journal detailing Shadow's creation, as it looks like we're going to get a lot more on Shadow's lore. And I'm super excited to do a lot bigger of a deep dive into this and hopefully make a video on this in the future of explaining all of Shadow's past and also even more of his future now going into this game. And it seems like a lot of theories might be correct with Angel Island being stamped right on the cover art of this, as it seems like Gerald Robotnik probably took inspiration off of Angel Island's prophecy of a blue hedgehog saving the day, and that's probably the biggest reason why Shadow's a hedgehog, and I'm sure they'll go into more detail with that, but I can't wait to see what's inside of this book. One of the coolest things that we've seen in all of Sonic is Sonic Adventure Legacy skin. While this isn't perfect to what he necessarily looked like in the Dreamcast or even Sonic Adventure DX, this still looks really awesome, and I can't wait to see what this looks like inside of the game. But this also confirms skins inside of the game, so I would imagine that we get more skins for Modern, Classic, and even Shadow. And for the Digital Deluxe Edition, you get the Terrio skin for Shadow, which looks absolutely incredible. If you don't know who Terios is, this was the original design for Shadow when they were first in development for Sonic Adventure 2 and what he was intended to look like at first. This looks so goddamn cool, and it's so crazy to think that Sega would even add a skin like this. I had mentioned this in the past that I think that they should do this since they did the Rabbit and Sonic Superstars being Sonic's concept art, but doing this for Shadow is so cool looking. And I can't wait to see what other skins are going to look like for Shadow, as it looks like there are some other holiday ones that are going to be releasing later on. But not only that, inside of the Deluxe Edition, you also get an additional level for Shadow as well. That is one of the craziest things to think of, is they're going to be adding levels to this, and I would imagine they add more levels to Sonic Generations as well, as I would really like to see them to add potentially a stage from Forces, Mania, or some other Sonic games that have happened after Generations. And I can't wait to see what they decide to add with all of these. The other things that you get are skill points with this nice shiny new Chow credit card. It looks like we're going to be spending that good old Sonic money in here. But when it says skill points, it makes me kind of think of the skill points that we use in Frontiers, and it kind of makes me think that there's going to be some type of skill tree inside of this game, and it'll be really cool to see if they decide to do something like that. Or it's just simply the fact that it's going to be skill points to buy skills for Shadow and Sonic inside of both games. They might just give you some extra points to start, so you can just kind of be even more busted to start the game, which will be really cool to see how that works. And it also looks like that you're going to get a digital art book. This might be very similar to the Japanese art book that they're getting from the collector's edition, just as a digital form. And you also get more music tracks, and I really hope they decide to add a lot of Shadow tracks with this, like I Am All of Me, All Hail Shadow, White Acropolis, White Jungle, and etc. And one of the really big bonuses you get for the Deluxe Edition is you also get to play the game 3 days early, and that's a really cool bonus to be able to add for people that want to pay the extra $10 to be able to access the game just a little bit earlier than others. But that's it for what we know so far inside of Sonic X Shadow Generations. There's truly a lot of news that drops, and all of this is super exciting, and this is definitely the most hype I've been for a Sonic game in a long time, to be honest with you. I'm more hype about this game than I was for Sonic Frontiers. And I think that is simply just because of the fan reaction to it. When we first got gameplay for Sonic Frontiers, it was super bad gameplay, and it was super criticized by fans and just many people alike. As the person that was playing the game just clearly had never played a Sonic game before, or just didn't know what they were doing inside of Frontiers. But the really cool thing with Sonic X Shadow Generations is we got to see fans play it, and they know what they're actually doing. The first gameplay that I actually saw was from Fidel Games Cage, and he genuinely was trying to pull off shortcuts, but he also has played Sonic games before. It's truly a breath of fresh air to see people actually knowing how to play Sonic games for once while actually trying the game for the first time. And I hope that they continue to let fans show gameplay first, opposed to doing media like IGN, because we clearly have seen that backfire how many times. Like, who at Sega is making this decision to give IGN the first gameplay of each of these Sonic games? Like, can we just stop that altogether? But that's all that we know for Sonic X Shadow Generations so far, as I'm sure that we'll be getting more news about this in the near future in the next couple months before the release in fall. But let me know if you're going to be buying the Deluxe Edition or the Standard Edition in the comments below. And if you're not buying it, what's wrong with you? But with all jokes aside, be sure to hit that like button if you liked the video and subscribe, as it does help out the channel a lot. And this channel just recently hit 10,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for 10K, as it truly means a lot. And I can't believe just how fast this channel is growing each and every day, and I appreciate all the support from you guys. You guys are truly amazing, and I can't wait to see what other content I make for you guys in the future and all the amazing videos we're going to be creating with Sonic X Shadow Generations when the game releases. But with all that being said, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace!